Phil's this is Phil's first absence. And I have something to read from Tom later on, so he's contributing. All right. Now we want to open it up for discussion from the PAT members. You may have some questions for Maggie, and of course those are welcome. You might want to talk a little bit about some of the design parameters that we discussed the last time, or you might want to start weighing in on the trail design itself. I think Maggie did a good job of laying out what was what and where and how it might work together, both pedestrians and bikes. Some of the rationale, that's why I really wanted to listen to her uninterrupted, because you can see there's a pretty darn good rationale behind where things are going and avoiding the steepest slopes and what we're working around and all that kind of stuff. Some folks in the audience had questions during the break about the cross-property trails that you may have seen earlier in some earlier plans. And for the pilot project, those cross-property trails are not going to be built. It is a perimeter trail pilot project. So just to make sure, if you haven't been at the meetings and heard that is the decision that's been laid down on that. So that's why we're working with this perimeter trail system. So just open it up for comments from PAT members. What do you like? What do you have questions about? Any concerns? Let's start with Dave.
Well, thank you. You put a lot of work into it, and obviously you follow all the data, which is good. I was wondering, I only see 2 access points for bicycles. Can you tell me the rationale behind that?
I'm starting with that. Well, we thought those would be the main access points, and those are access points that are easily accessible on grade without having to deal, like, for instance, with stairs. It's something we could look at, for instance, if from other places in Rainier Vista, for instance, the Pea Patch entry, the trails are very close together there. We could make that a combined entry.
Dave, are you feeling like there should be more?
No.
Where were you going with that?
My concern with only 2 is that it really limits the number of bikers that can get in and use it. And if it's a pilot project, we really do want to provide as many access points as possible. So I think something from both the northeast side and the northwest side.
Well, I will mention at the north end, it's very difficult to get excuse me, I'll try to talk into the mic. At the north end, it's very difficult to get the bike trail close to a road access point because of the grades. Because it's so narrow, and you have to go from the highest elevation to the lowest elevation in a short period of time, the trail has to be kind of bending down towards the middle and then angling away fairly quickly. So it's hard to get those bikes close to, for instance, the corners at Andover without having stairs in between them and the road. So that particular, we can look at that more closely, but it is a little difficult in that particular location. I think better opportunities are at the, for instance, the Pea Patch entry, the Overlook entry, and also possibly at the TC Viewpoint.
So my concern is because we are not allowed to have cross trails in here, which I still think would be greatly beneficial for the whole community. With only 2 access points, I mean, it's going to be hard. If someone wants to get from the southeast to the northwest, it's not really an option to use the trail. And I think a lot of people would really benefit from going on a shorter loop to access some of the neighborhoods behind Jefferson and towards Kimball. But I think the more access points we have, and I understand the challenge, obviously, with that, the west slope coming off of Chasty Boulevard is very steep, but I think the more access points we have, it's going to give us a clear data whether or not these bike pilots really do work. With only 2, it's not really giving enough data sample to really let us know if this project, if a bike project would work. And it doesn't really allow for a lot of transportation of the people that want to commute on bike.
Great, thanks, Dave. Connie. Use your microphone, please.
Thank you for your work, but My question is, and I was under the impression, and I'm sorry I wasn't here the first time when you presented and everything, but I had surgery that day, so I couldn't be here. But I want to know, I thought that I was going to receive two different layouts. One that was going to show me the trail as I thought it was going to be as a multi-purpose, one trail, and then possibly this, and all I got was this. And so, is there a reason why you did not, for those of us that wanted to see what the city council said that they wanted to see, is there a reason why that wasn't presented to us?
Well, of course, we thought about a unified dual-purpose trail, but it quickly became apparent that that would not be the optimal experience for either set of, it seemed like it would make the experience worse for both sets of users, and it also put some constraints that made it, I think it seemed clear to us that if the city council members knew about the details of the site and the topography, for instance, that wouldn't be considered a mandate. I think they would look at it and say, oh, we see what you mean, it's not reasonable to have a combined use trail versus going on these steep places. So what we did was develop the plan that, in our professional opinions, works out the best for this site and works out best for the different sets of users. And that is this plan. We didn't want to show you a plan that was not feasible.
I think this is a good point to bring up for the PAT, because I feel like overall the people that filled out the form were quite clear that separate uses was going to be optimal for safety. The people that filled out the form did that. I know, I'm just saying the majority. I didn't say everybody, I said the majority.
When we sent out, you mean the draft design principles and the folks who responded?
Yeah, it was evident that a large percentage of this group felt that a large percentage, we don't like my math. Okay, there were many people, let me just finish, please. So that there were many people that filled out the form and provided commentary that said that separate was going to be optimal for both environmental safety and user purposes. So to me, I feel like this is an important opportunity for us to actually discuss this, since obviously we don't have consensus on that. If indeed, and this is the question I posed to everybody here, I posed it in the email I sent as well, if indeed it is proven that it is more environmentally sound, it is better for the land and better for the users to have a trail system that is like this, which separates uses, can we all agree that that is what we should endorse, or are we going to stick to language even if it's worse for the environment? That's my question.
We have yet to see if it's environmentally better for it.
You didn't listen to the research
I
that
heard everything
said
she said,
that certain
but that
trails
doesn't-
are capable of being on steep areas and other ones aren't, so.
But
Doesn't
But
matter.
to Connie's point, there is additional environmental
Right.
analysis that's going to take place, and that's what we'll hear about it in our January meeting.
So I'm just saying, though, if it's proven that indeed this is more sustainable to separate, that it's safer, better for users, can we get on the same page that we're not going to throw the whole project under the bus? Can we just agree that that we'll go ahead and go for it if we get that information?
Well, first we got to see that. You know, I personally couldn't make that blanket agreement. And we'll see what the additional environmental information shows us.
Okay, let's, others weighing in here, it looks like, Kathy?
And the reason why I was shaking my head was because there were only, I believe it was 5 people out of the path that filled out and sent in information. So I don't want people to be misled in thinking that everybody contributed. So that's why I was shaking my head. So the people that did submit except for me, because I still believe in looking at a multi-use trail. So I'm disappointed too as well. I was hoping to see some options and some choices. So what I hear you saying is that looking at Cheesty, it doesn't work well. But there may be some other places that we could possibly take a look at that a bicycle, a mountain bike park would work well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm not sure I understood what you just said.
Just for the record, I did not respond, but I agree with what you just said, different trails.
I don't think anyone's saying a bike trail can't work here, Kathy. I think Maggie was saying that the bike trail, they've designed these separate lanes or tracks, in some places parallel trails, but the bike trail is working okay.
Yeah.
Preliminary schematic again.
What I said was that I didn't show a completely combined perimeter trail because I thought that wouldn't work. We
Okay,
showed
that's
this
what I meant.
plan where they separate in places because we do believe that works.
So, okay, so that's what I mean, is that
Okay.
a multi-use trail doesn't work in this area, and that's why I'm saying that if we continue to move forward, I would like to just offer that we possibly look at some other options.
What other options are you talking about?
For a bicycle park. That if we decide that it doesn't work here for a multi-use. if
I
we
don't think
decide-
anyone said it doesn't work. I guess what you're saying, you are saying that having a combined trail
Right.
is equivalent to being multi-use. Whereas I think what we're saying is that this is a multi-use trail. This is a multi-use trail.
See, and I think this goes back to
Yes,
when you were
separate.
saying that we need to come to a consensus about the trails, because I see this as two separate trails
Mhm.
and not the one multi-use trail that I had an understanding of last time, so.
Okay, opinion noted.
And again, my question though is if this concept of a trail where both users are on the exact same surface at the exact same time throughout the entire trail proves to be based upon the research I'm hearing and further research, if it proves to be less environmentally sustainable and less desirable from the community, do you still think we need to go through with that? Or you're saying that if that's the case, then we don't do anything?
I'm open to looking at the data. Yeah, open to looking at the data, but right now I'm disappointed that we're not looking at what I thought was a multi-use trail that we had talked about last time. So I thought we were, like Connie, we're gonna get two options to look at.
Hey,
Okay, let's hear from Ed and then Daryl.
hey, Maggie, great presentation. Is that possible, what she's asking for? Is that something that you have on file that can be easily put together? Just for conversation's sake, just to satisfy.
We don't have a plan developed to this extent. We started to develop a combined plan. It essentially, I can tell you what it looks like. It looks like the bike plan, it looks like the bike path, because the bike path is harder to fit into the slope. It has more rigorous requirements, because it can't go as, so if you want to combine them, the pedestrian path then has to stay at that lower gradient and do the wiggles and things with the bike path. So, and then I think where it becomes a question is then either you decide that you can build it here and you just make a much bigger impact because it's a much wider trail on the steep parts. So combining them would have a kind of a broad swath of impact. It'd be a 5-foot wide trail, so it would have 15-foot excavation cut. So I think when we got to that point, it's like combining them would, the bike trail has to do the wiggles and things. It did not seem optimal for people. I think if you were walking and you had to do this in the room, you would start doing shortcuts. So it didn't seem like it was an optimal experience for the pedestrians, and it seemed like it was going to have too much impact on the steeper slopes. So we got to that point and dropped it and went with the one that we thought was really feasible.
Got it. The only reason I asked is just to kind of advance our conversation along. If there was some disappointment and that's something that you wanted to see, that we see it and that we keep moving forward.
Yeah,
So that's the only reason I asked.
well, it's certainly possible to show, a plan that, yes, it can be shown in plan, and then you have to, evaluate all those impacts side to side.
Not to create more work for you.
Well, I think that's really up to Parks and Doug and looking at that environmental review, because that's where the scope and the investment is going to be at this point. Daryl?
I was going to speak to Dan's question about kind of bringing the group together and focus sort of on the responses to your requests and trying to get some suggestions on design criteria. And I did a little tally, and we had a total of 7 people respond out of 12, a little over half. There was 4 people actually responded directly to the individual in the table line item questions. 3 of those suggested multiple trails would be the best option. And so we struggle a little bit as a group to think that 3 is some type of majority out of 12.
To clarify, I was talking about the people that filled out the form, and you guys who wrote multi-paragraph long essays, basically saying you're not in favor at all of this whole project. I didn't count into that tally. I was counting people that filled out the form that was based upon our discussion as a group, which came up with our criteria.
My response actually is 4 pages long, and it was a direct response to the very first question. And if you look into that, you'll see that I was very much in favor of a single trail, multi-use, as spelled out by the City Council.
And again, my question to you is, hearing that a single multi-use trail blazing a 15-foot impact through the forest, are you really happy with that? Is that really what you want?
Do I want to see any blazing at all?
Do you want a dual use, larger impact swath on this dotted red line corridor? Is that really the trail that you're going for here?
I think it's all in the perception. We mentioned Portland's standards for a multi-use trail that's 4 feet wide.
So what we're talking about through the forest here is 1 to 2 feet wide. So you prefer a 4 foot wide with the swaths on the side. I mean, to have a mountain bicycle and a pedestrian sharing the same trail, I think the concern here is that it needs to be wide enough in order to allow those 2 uses to exist in the same territory. So you're saying that you're comfortable with a 4 foot wide swath versus the 1 to 2 foot wide, including the buffers that go along with the larger impact of the slopes like she described. Just to clarify, is that what you want? I mean, I just want to know, is that what you want, or is that what you're saying because you want to derail this?
I guess the question is, we're first trying to understand what the scope of the project is.
So let's move on. We're not going to resolve this issue here. Clearly, we can't do it, Dan. People want more information. It sounds like there'd be worse impacts from the combine. People aren't going to be comfortable saying one way or the other right tonight. We've got some time to do that. What I'd like you to do is move into what you heard from Maggie, what you're looking at, where do you continue to have concerns? And it sounds like one concern is the 2 paths or the 2 lanes in and of themselves are a concern. So we'll note that concern, and obviously that's something that gets looked at through the environmental analysis. We get it and we understand it, but I don't want us to spend this whole time debating 1 lane, 2 lanes. I'd like us to talk about some of the features she presented and some of the things that she laid out here. Good, bad, liking, not liking them, in addition to the 1 and 2 lanes. Sarah?
I'm afraid